Lane Kiffin flipped a Big Ten commitment, and Ole Miss has a higher chance at the college football playoff than you might think they do.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast around. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we discuss Ole Miss flipping a Big Ten commitment and what that means for Pete Golding and the Ole Miss defense. We break down the ranking and check out some highlights of a really intriguing prospect. And we start to wonder about Deuce Gerald, who is slated to be on campus this weekend. In the second segment, we talk about ESPN releasing their FPI rankings, setting up a clash for the ages potentially against LSU. Thank goodness that game is in Oxford. And finally, we look at some of the week one lines that our friends at FanDuel, they are putting out right now. It's a jam-packed show, and it should be, because today is my birthday. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They offer even more perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss from time to time. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Our friends at FanDuel put their week one lines out. Some of them, we'll go over those in the third segment. It should be pretty awesome. So Ole Miss got a commitment over the weekend from an official visit from a player named Carmelow Reed. Defensive end, 6'7", 250 pounds. Good player for Ole Miss, and this is a good pickup for Ole Miss. When you look at this, he is out of Rich Township High School in Illinois. He is 6'7", 250 pounds. He's an edge rusher. Will he make it all the way up and grow into a 3 technique? That is an interesting question to me, because if you look at his video, and we will in just a second, there's a little bit of Robert Kimdichie to his game. The straight power that he has at 6'7", 250 pounds. You're not quite sure of the competition he's going up against, but you can see that he has that level of power. So if he gets in a college dining facility and starts on a meal plan and things like that, 6'7", 250 could easily be 6'7", 310, and he could grow into a 3 technique. I think it's a guarantee at this point. At 6'7", 250 pounds, he's going to grow into a 5 technique. That's a 3-4 defensive end. At the worst of weight gain, he is going to be a 4-3 strong side defensive end. But I think he could possibly grow into a 3 technique. He is a 3-star on all the sites, not necessarily important about what's going on. An 88 on 3, an 88 on 247, 90 is the threshold for a 4-star, just by the way. ESPN has him at 79. Rivals has him at a 5.7. I think 5.8 is a 4-star at Rivals. It's been a while since I worked there, but unless they change that, that is what it is. He's a really good player. And if you look at the highlights, you see a guy that physically dominates the player in front of him. His direct movement that he has, A to B, it is hard for one person to slow him down. He is simply stronger than everybody else. The question that he is going to have answered is his athleticism quick enough to survive on the edge as an edge rusher, like Suntaran Perkins or something like that? Or will he naturally fit on the strong side defensive end or a 3-4-5 technique? Or will he be a 3 technique like Prey Jerry or Walter Nolan was? If he grows to that level with his amount of athleticism, you're looking at a potential +3 technique. Listen, we like to poke fun from time to time at the Big Ten, but Wisconsin in general has shown a track record of being very good at picking out defensive end prospects. They found J.J. Watt over there. He's a 2-star player, turned him into one of the most dominant defensive linemen over the course of this generation. Wisconsin's pretty good at picking out players that fit those needs. The question becomes, with Carmelow Reed, is he that type of player? Is he one of those players that will hit on being an outside edge rusher? Or in 3 years, will you see him as a starting 3 technique and you're like, oh, yes, I remember that guy. Listen, he's out of Richton Park, Illinois, which means in the age of the transfer portal window, development is at best difficult. But if he can develop what he needs to be on the inside potentially, or on the strong side defensive end or a 5 technique, he is somebody that can absolutely help you out. This is a good pickup, kind of a shot across the bow. And you kind of judge how good of a pickup is based on what happens on social media. If somebody's a commit, but they don't think he will be a commit later on, or if he's a commit and they are very excited to pick up that commit, you can tell by social media on time to time and what they do. And this one, Randall Joyner tweeted out about that. On this one, Pete Golding, of course, did his shark thing. Lane Kiffin tweeted about that. This is a pretty big pickup that they seem to be pretty excited about. So we'll see if he develops. Listen, Andrew Maddox is on campus. He is somebody that is a 3 technique for the future. Maybe he's a nose guard. We have to see exactly what this defensive line morphs into after Xavier Harris and this group of transfers, Sontaran Perkins, move on. They have Cam Franklin. They have Jam Brown. They have different players that can help them out on that defensive line. And that defensive line has a chance to be very good. But we have to see what this defensive line looks like after next season to know exactly where this player fits in. Size-wise, he's a little bit thicker version of Chamberlain Campbell, the player that transferred out. I think he has a chance to be a Xavier Harris. He might not be 350 pounds in a couple of years, but I think he's going to put on weight, and he might end up being a nose guard that is just a problem for teams to deal with. We'll see exactly how that looks. Really good player. I'm super intrigued about what he can do. And speaking of defensive ends, and you're not really sure what's going to happen when they get into college, Deuce Gerald is due on campus this weekend. And as I have said multiple times, he is the most important recruit on Ole Miss's board. But he has visits to Oregon, Ohio State, all of the big boys, save Georgia, want him. And this is somebody that if he was 4 inches taller, would have an offer from everybody and be in the top 5 in the country. Deuce Gerald is a really good football player. When you put him out at a strong side defensive end, he wreaks havoc. His pass rush game is completely off the charts. But the question on him, and I talked to the Florida football scout at the Under Armour All-American game last year, is how could he handle, say, a power play to where there's a guard pulling around looking to hit that defensive line? What does Deuce Gerald do in that situation? And that is the difference between him being an elite pass rusher and a situational player and potentially being the best player in football. I'm dead serious about that. He's unbelievably good. The people recruiting him would not be recruiting him if he was not good. Deuce Gerald has a chance to be a star, and we'll see exactly how that looks. So magazine season is here, and the ESPN FPI just dropped. How does Ole Miss stack up in the playoff race? The answer might surprise you. We'll break that down next. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performance and major momentum shifts and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I know baseball is a 4-letter word to Ole Miss fans right now, but over in MLB, Spencer Torkelson and Ryler Green are leading the best record baseball team out there. Maybe a same game parlay would work for you with those players because they are certainly coming up huge. Heck, Ole Miss comes in as a 37.5-point favorite versus Georgia State in the latest FanDuel odds. If you're new to FanDuel, it's kind of the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If that wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So welcome to magazine season. And I guess yesterday, Lindy started hitting these newsstands. Today, though, the ESPN FPI is going to be the subject matter of conversation because when you look at these FPI rankings, it makes all the sense in the world. People are going to argue until they're blue in the face about it. I love rankings. Everything about rankings create discussion, engagement. A ranking is a surefire way to get people to talk about you. And ESPN released their rankings of the college football top 25 on the ESPN FPI. They've got Texas number 1, Georgia number 2, Bama number 3, Ohio State number 4, Penn State number 5, Oregon number 6. It was like 3 SEC, 3 Big Ten. You see why the playoff is kind of going the way it's going. We'll talk about that more in just a second. Notre Dame comes in, and then it is Texas A&M, Miami, Tennessee, Clemson, LSU, Ole Miss, Auburn, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Michigan, Florida, Southern Cal, SMU, Kansas State, Arkansas, Missouri. That Arkansas-Missouri game looks like it could be pretty interesting this year. Arizona State and Nebraska. That is the top 25 of the ESPN FPI. My first impressions of that is it is mostly SEC and Big Ten teams. We talk all the time about the Big 12 and the ACC and their fans whining. This is an example of why that is the case. When you look at hard data, analytic stuff to where you strictly point at the better team against other conferences, the SEC is head and shoulders above the rest. And because of this, because of the FPI, Ole Miss made the game of the year list twice. They have 20 games or so on there that would be games of the year. Ole Miss versus Georgia on October 18th in Athens is on the list. That got rated as a 91. And then at the bottom of this list, you have LSU and Ole Miss, number 12 versus number 13. Ole Miss and LSU always seemingly are putting together great games against each other. It's must-see TV. It's just like the 50s were. The Ole Miss LSU game has turned into must-see television. And that is awesome because if you watch this show for any period of time, you know that the LSU game is very important to me. That is the game that I most want to win. Now, the Mississippi State game is the game I most don't want to lose, but the game I most want to win on Ole Miss's schedule every year is the LSU game. LSU comes in at number 12, Ole Miss at 13, and it gets a little bit more, I guess, than even that. When you look at the playoff chances of each of the teams and the win totals, they have LSU coming in at 17.1 and Ole Miss at 15.9 as far as their ratings on the FPI. But if you go over 3 columns, you can see that Ole Miss has an actual better chance to make the college football playoff than LSU. And Ole Miss is slated to win about a half a game more. The reason for that is likely because the Ole Miss LSU game is in Oxford. But Ole Miss is sitting pretty at number 13 with a chance to do what they need to do. Now, last year, there were consensus top 5, had some of the most talented players in all of the country, and they managed to mess that up 3 times. Ole Miss has to learn how to play as the favorite. They cannot play as an underdog, or you're simply going to lose games when you play the slot machine, because that is what they've been doing. So we will see exactly how this looks for the Ole Miss Rebels. The one game last season to where they completely played like the favorite and played like they deserved to be there was the Georgia game. And in that game, Caden Davis kicked, 6 field goals, and Ole Miss ended up winning the game by 2 touchdowns. So we'll see exactly what it looks like. Now, which conferences are projected for the most playoff teams? This is relevant because of what is going on in the ecosphere of college football. The SEC is projected at 4.6 playoff teams, 61% probability of winning a championship. The Big Ten is at 2.9 playoff teams. Now you see why the Big Ten is so locked in on the 4-4-2-2-1 scenario. 25% chance to win a championship. Put those together, you're at about 87% chance that the SEC or the Big Ten is going to hoist the trophy at the end of the year. The ACC is at 8.3%. They are the most dominant of the G8 conferences. And that is likely because Clemson and Miami are going to be fairly high up, although we'll have to see exactly how that looks, honestly. Independent at 0.5 to make a playoff team is 50-50 shot that Notre Dame makes it or they don't. And if Notre Dame makes it, they have a better shot to win the national title than the Big 12. The Big 12 is kind of a joke right now. It just is. When they lost Texas and Oklahoma and Nebraska and Missouri and Texas A&M, they lost the heart of the Big 12. And now Texas Tech and Baylor and Arizona State, they are running things. And it's very off-putting to see exactly how that goes. This FPI list from ESPN should let you know Ole Miss at a 30% probability of making the college football playoff is interesting. When you look at the best games of the year, I do not know that Ole Miss is going to beat Georgia and Athens. That's going to be a hard win for Ole Miss to get because you would like to think that Georgia is going to be very dialed into that football game after what happened to them a year ago in Oxford. Kirby Smart's never won a football game in Oxford, Mississippi. He's 0-2. But Ole Miss hasn't won in Georgia since, I think, 1997. So it's going to be very difficult for Ole Miss to get that game. The Ole Miss LSU game is a gettable game. That is a absolutely gettable game. Lane Kiffin has not lost to LSU in Oxford, Mississippi. Multiple quarterbacks. This will be his third quarterback in a row. We'll see exactly what that looks like. Garrett Nussmeier and all that. We'll see. Ole Miss and Oklahoma. Ole Miss is 13. Oklahoma is 16, which means they are just off of the top games list. That is another game that you need to pay attention to because Oklahoma is going to be pretty jacked up as well. They going to have a pretty good defense. They have recruited very well. And if John Mateer and the offensive coordinator that came over from the Washington State Cougars, this offense can be pretty good. I think Jalen Ott from Cal is going to be the running back. Oklahoma legitimately has a chance to be really good. That's going to be a tough game. So Ole Miss has to win one of those 3 games. And they have to win out against Florida, South Carolina, and the other games. But if Ole Miss does that, they're 10-2 and in the playoff. We'll have to see exactly how Austin Simmons adjusts to SEC football as a starter. We'll have to see the new weapons that the Rebels accumulated in the offseason. And we have to see the front 7. Will that front 7 be the force that we all think it can be? And will they do enough in the secondary to basically keep other teams at bay? Lots of stuff. ESPN FPI, though, is very high on them. Ole Miss has recruited a 5-star every single year for the last 3 years. Will they get another one? We'll see. But Ole Miss is recruited pretty well. They have good players on their team, and we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, when we come back, lots of interesting stuff on the menu in our final segment. Week 1 betting lines are there from our friends at FanDuel. They're starting to roll in. How does Ole Miss stack up against Georgia State? And what are the other early odds around the SEC? We'll break all of that down next. It's magazine season. That's what it is. So we're going to be looking at football basically nonstop. There might be a couple of shows that are extra on basketball and things like that, but it's basically football from now until basketball season starts. So if you are a football savant, we are the channel for you, because we are going to talk about that pretty much nonstop, almost annoyingly. But the week one betting lines are starting to roll in, and there are some very interesting ones that are sitting out there. First of all, Auburn is a road favorite of 2.5 points against the Baylor Bears on the Friday before August 30th, before the first game. This will be the nation's first chance to really jump on an SEC team. And Hugh Freeze traditionally does not do well in hostile environments. Ole Miss fans know that. Yes, they beat Alabama, but you remember the LSU game in 2014 to where they were going to kick a field goal and then they didn't kick a field goal, and then all of a sudden they just threw a Hail Mary up in a 10-7 football game. Decisions get tricky for Hugh Freeze. Auburn a 2.5 road favorite in a game that Hugh Freeze traditionally loses. Everybody pay attention to that football game, because Auburn's season could be over really before it starts. Texas is at Ohio State. The big noon kickoff on the week one weekend. Ohio State is a 3.5 point favorite over Texas. Listen, Texas legitimately has a chance to go 8-4 this season. Everybody, they look at you and they're like, whoa, you can't be saying that. If you look at who they play and where they play them, Texas can be a really good football team and lose games. That's the way it's set up. Texas at Ohio State. That place is going to be really jacked up to get that win. And they're familiar with each other because they played over the course of this season. When you look at the next game for Texas, they have Oklahoma. You cannot, with a straight face, say that Texas is just going to win that game. Oklahoma has too much of a history of beating Texas. They play at Georgia. They lost to Georgia twice last year. Georgia is going to be a good team. Can you get the victory in Sanford Stadium? And, of course, they have to go to the Swamp with DJ Lagway from Texas, from Willis, Texas. There's a chance that all of those can kind of go sideways on the Texas Longhorn. They can be a pretty good football team and finish up 8-4. Seriously. Syracuse is at Tennessee. Tennessee is a 12.5 point favorite. That kind of makes sense. There's no Kyle McCord walking through that door. We'll see what Syracuse has. But there's no Nico Iamaleava walking through the door either. We'll see which team can kind of figure out their quarterback situation. Mississippi State's favored by 13.5 over Southern Miss. The game is in Hattiesburg. This is a game that Southern Miss could possibly get out-athleted in. This is also a game that Jeff Lebby is not up to where he is. If they haven't quite figured out the quarterback, even with Blake Shapen or Kamario Davis, this is a game that Southern Miss can make it a lot closer than that line. The coach at Southern Miss and a lot of the players from Southern Miss were Sun Belt champions a year ago. It might take a little bit of time to get there. Charlie Huff's going to get Southern Miss there. Toledo is at Kentucky. Kentucky's favored by 11.5. Kentucky's offense traditionally has not been good. They brought in Zach Calzada from Incarnate Word, a two-time washout of SEC football. Toledo last year put it on Mississippi State. This game has a chance to be a lot closer than you think it would be. Kentucky traditionally, over the last several years, they've been offensively challenged. We'll see how it goes. Georgia is hosting Marshall. Georgia is a 38.5 point favorite. Marshall lost almost their entire football team after Huff went to Southern Mississippi. I really don't know what to make of this game. Georgia doesn't have a quarterback yet. We'll see. This could be a situation to where Georgia is able to kind of step out and separate from Marshall. Alabama is favored by 11.5 on the road at Florida State. Listen, this game has a chance to get weird. It does. After the Oklahoma game last season, you can't just Nick Saban it. It's not the robot thing that we're used to. Alabama favored by 11.5 at Florida State with Gus Malzahn as the offensive coordinator, with Castellanos as the quarterback, with the players that they have. This is going to be a better Florida State team than last season, if we're just being honest about it. But Alabama, they have a little bit of a burr in their saddle after not making the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs again, that place could absolutely revolt. LSU is at Clemson. Clemson's favored by 2.5 points. This is a game that, if Clemson gets it going offensively, could be a little bit of a shootout. I like the Clemson offense. The Clemson defense is probably going to be a little bit better than the LSU defense. I like Clemson in that game. That's a nice week 1 win potentially for the Clemson Tigers. And LSU traditionally does not win these games. Georgia State's the underdog to Ole Miss. Ole Miss is favored by 37.5 points. We'll talk about that in just a second. UTSA is at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is favored by 20.5 points. If Marcel Reed figures out the passing game, if the defense kind of figures out how to play zone defense from time to time, Texas A&M could be very good. They recruited at a very high level, but they kind of are what they are, so we'll see. And finally, the South Carolina Gamecocks are at the Virginia Tech Hokies. South Carolina is favored by 9.5. Lenore Sellers and company look to kind of put it on them, but it's a road game in Blacksburg, Enter Sandman, the whole 9 yards. We'll see how that goes. Going back to the Ole Miss game, the over-under in that game is 61.5 points. The spread is 37.5, somewhere in the neighborhood of 52 to 14. Somewhere around there is what they think this game is going to go. So we'll see. We'll see what they're able to do. But I like these lines early on. The SEC could struggle early on next season. Just be prepared for that. If you're not prepared for that, you probably should get there, if we're going to be completely honest about it. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. For your second listen, check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everyone. And remember, analytics is just the old English word meaning bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.